Good evening. Tonight on the Yara Dialogues, we are so pleased to welcome Leena Yousefi. She is a multi-award-winning family law lawyer and the founder of YLAW, the fastest growing female-led law firm in British Columbia. Leading the conversation will be Shermin Kruse. She is the CEO of MyCubed, a law professor at Northwestern University, an executive producer with TEDx Wrigleyville, an international humanitarian, and a recognized author. These two powerhouse women will talk about how they have created their own personal brands and in so doing have shaped their lives and taken control of their careers. It is going to be an inspiring conversation. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Shermin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Atusa, for that warm introduction. It is indeed my honor and privilege to be here today for the second Yara Leadership Dialogue. And I get to interview the incredible, the striking, the brilliant Leena Yousefi. Leena, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much, Shermin.
So Atusa gave a very brief introduction, just really high level, outlining what an incredible person you are. But to give our viewers a little bit more detail, you've been chosen as one of the 25 most influential lawyers in Canada, one of Business in Vancouver's top 40 under 40, voted as the #1 top rated Vancouver divorce lawyer in British Columbia. You've won over 90% of your family law cases from 2013 to the present, which I can't get over that. But besides all that, you're the only lawyer in the history of Canada to have your law firm ranked in both in the top 400 fastest growing companies in Canada by the Globe and Mail and in the top 500 companies by Canadian Business, both at the same time. That's actually never happened to any other lawyer, male or female, before to have both of those recognitions in the same year. It's quite remarkable. Your success, both as a lawyer and a businesswoman, has been comprehensively profiled through multiple prestigious and national publications, including Canadian Business and the Globe and Mail. One of the things I love most is because I get to really know you is A Week in Your Life was featured on the BBC. It wasn't just one article, it was a whole week where every day of your life was featured. You have been the successful counsel on several groundbreaking cases in British Columbia, featured in the media, including winning precedent-setting cases on really serious and sometimes terrifying issues such as child abduction, but also across a spectrum of legal and family law issues such as property division, spousal support, child custody, child alienation, child support. So how do you do all of this? I mean, what is it about your professional career that you feel has been able to earn you the accolades and the accomplishments that you've had?
I've just been able to thrive on people not believing in me. So when somebody says, you can't do this, or I just, I spent a good portion of my life believing in people not believing in me. And I really went down a deep, deep, dark hole for a long time. And I lost many years of my life just being paralyzed by just this conception of myself that I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. So I spent enough time in that space that I realized I never want to go back there. So instead of believing in that, I fought harder than I ever could to prove to myself and everybody else that they should believe in me and I should believe in me and I can do it. Like the things that you've gone through, it's very pretty on paper when you say, these are what you've accomplished, but what isn't known is how many times I've tried and I failed at accomplishing every single one of these items. It's been years of trying and correcting and coming from a different angle. And, at the end of the day, the one thing that keeps me going is that I can, number one, that I know that I can do it. And number two, that I'm never, ever, ever going to let someone else, aside from myself, telling me whether I can or can't do something. So that's been the reason why I've been motivated to get to where I am.
I mean, that's absolutely extraordinary. And I'll tell our viewers, I had the opportunity to do a pre-interview with Leena in order to just get to know her as a human being. And her philosophy and her ability to be inspired by people who don't believe in her is truly one of the most remarkable sentiments I've ever heard. And I want to get to that and explore it deeply. But before that, I'd love for our viewers to just get to know your business a little bit more. What is it that you do? And what is it that you're most passionate about in your work?
My business module, ever since I got these awards, there's been a few entities, governmental entities approaching me and, asking me, so where do you want to go from here? And this is the answer to your question. How much more money do you want to make? How many more businesses do you want to start? How can we help you do that? Which is a beautiful thing about, living in Canada. You get a lot of support. But my answer has always been, I don't measure what I do based on profits or money. I measure things based on success. So my entire goal in everything I do is to create success, but based on a different module. And that, again, comes from the fact that just people tend not to believe in me because I have a different module. So what I try to do with everything in life is to introduce something that for a long time people have not believed in or have thought that, it's going to create some sort of a failure. And the prime example of that is women who have children. That's been my biggest frustration because myself having children has brought nothing but success and balance to my life. So what I do is I actively go after other women who just had children or are about to get pregnant or about to start families. Because
do you mean in expanding your workforce? That's the type of person that you recruit.
Single moms, women with children, men from different cultural backgrounds, from disadvantaged backgrounds, African-American men, for example, Jewish men or Middle Eastern women. It's everything that people look at as some sort of a liability to me is a huge, huge strength. Things that come from our nature, our ability, for example, to reproduce, to have children, or our strength as women to raise children on our own if, we don't have a partner. These are things that you can transform into a workplace and bring in people who have them, who can actually help you expand way faster than people who are typically known as an advantage to a business, such as, the typical single white male, for example. And, nothing against the single white male. I love them too. But my entire module is what can we do to take these people who've been basically stigmatized or rejected by the society as some sort of a liability and turn them into the biggest weapons for success. Incredible. So my business module is based on that. When it comes to me, is how can I do to take every single weakness that I have and turn it into a strength? And what can I do to bring anybody else who thinks that they're weak based on a certain criteria and get them to believe that these are not weaknesses, this is power. So for that reason, I think why I may be able to pique someone's curiosity or interest in, writing about me is the fact that I do things differently and I believe in it. I take risks, and thankfully those risks have so far proven to be successful.
Well, so one of the things that fascinates me most about you is that you've approached the law in a much more entrepreneurial fashion, viewing it more like a business than simply traditional lawyering. I'd love for you to tell us what led you to this, because I'm fascinated then, now that you view it in an entrepreneurial fashion, by the innovative approach that you've taken in terms of finding those who are sort of more diamonds in the rough and feed off of the same lack of others believing in them as you do. But even just taking it a step back, what led you to this approach of treating the growth of your law firm as the growth of a startup in the tech industry, for instance? I've seen you apply some of the same thinking. It's fascinating.
It's a different concept that I follow. So, so I'm a family lawyer. I deal mostly, with separation and divorces and children. And it took me years to realize this, that why are we taking families, couples who at one point said vows to each other at some beautiful wedding, or, couples who experienced birth of their children as the biggest gifts of their lives. why when they separate do we even have to take them to court? Why do they even need to get lawyers to like advocate for their rights? You know, what rights are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Are we talking about the rights of an individual or the rights of a family as a single unit who performed well at some point and is now separating but not breaking in to the point that they need to become enemies, you know? So our module is, the typical module is, we've separated, we're each gonna get our own lawyers and we're gonna fight to win. So after years of doing litigation and winning, what I realized is that the word win should not exist in the family law context. People come looking for a resolution. They come to solve problems because they have different visions of how their own future or the future of their children should look like. So my business module is based on these people not coming to a law firm where a lawyer is going to fight for them. My business module is they're going to come to a spa where I'm going to make them feel comfortable, and I'm going to make them realize where their ex is coming from with their perspective, and what commonalities can we find so that they can have an amicable long-term solution. This is not like a fairy tale resolution to every family law problem. You know, like we have cases, like you said, of child abduction where it's black and white, right? Like a child has been abducted, you need to go to court and you need to figure it out. But in 99% of the cases, the other law firms are following this module of winning versus losing, wife versus husband, child versus parents, and it's just not working. So if you, again, go to the roots of family and what people really want when that unit is no longer functioning the way they want, and what you can do to help it, you're creating a positive core. You know, no matter how much emotions are playing in the surface, the core is positive and you need to get to that core. So my firm has become like a startup in a way, because it seems like a lot of lawyers or law firms are not understanding why we do family law, why we're doing what we're doing right now. So for that reason, a lot of the clients that come to us see that we want the best for them. Even if they may disagree with us, they see that, you know, we're not looking to charge, you know, hundreds of thousands in you know, money to go to trial and win something, that we care about them and what's to their best interest. And if that means that we make less money and we spend less time going to court, so be it. So for that reason, we've, you know, our brand has become very different from the other brands. Our brand is you're coming to a spa, versus, you know, the other brands are saying you're coming to get ready for a battle. Right. And for that reason, we've been growing pretty much exponentially.
That's incredible. So your approach toward family law is essentially, you know, obviously, as you said, there's cases that are black and white. There's times when you need to protect a child. There's times when you need to protect a battered wife. But overall, most people going through divorces, it's in their and their children's and their family's long-term interest to just simply figure out how to co-parent together post-divorce. And that's what you cater to. Do you find... What are your interactions like with other attorneys who might not be similarly minded and are representing the other spouse? So in other words, you know, you're representing the husband or the wife and you have this approach in mind, but maybe the attorney representing the other side doesn't, you know, they're ready to go to war. How do you, and I'm sure you come across that all the time. How do you approach that? How do you deal with that? And have you been able to earn the trust of your fellow family law lawyers in your community when you approach them?
That's a very, very good question, because as much as I have control over my own business module and my own clients, I don't have control over the other side, as we say, you know, the other lawyers or their clients and their strategy. And I would say, you know, at least half of the lawyers in my community like to, you know, litigate, and, you know, they think that getting results means winning, right? So what I try to do as much as I can is, in a sense, to beg them to at least just sit down in a 4-way meeting, or even get them on the phone, you know, instead of like writing letters and being like, your client did this, my client did that. I just try to say, can we start communicating? We don't have to agree to anything. I just want to communicate, because 99% of why cases go to trial is because of lack of communication. And it's the same reason, I think it's the biggest reason why people break up in the first place. They're bad communicators. So if I can get the other side to communicate with me, and then we can communicate with our clients, chances are we're going to get somewhere. But and there are, thankfully, lately there's been mechanisms in British Columbia law where you can force somebody to come to mediation. You can serve them with a notice that they have to attend mediation. And as much as they think that there's going to be no result, surprisingly, you as an attorney may know, you can get a lot of results in mediation, even if people absolutely hate each other. But there are cases where regardless of what you do, they're just not going to cooperate. And that becomes very evident after I try, 15 times and I don't get anywhere. Then I become the lawyer that my client needs me to be. I become the advocate. I become fearless. And I go in front of a judge and I explain to the judge why things should be the way they should be. And I think that the anatomy of a good lawyer is a lawyer who exhausts every opportunity to communicate and settle. And if that doesn't happen, is not afraid of litigating. And that's what I try to do in my practice as much as I can.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. It's so interesting. I speak with business leaders all the time, and I feel that I'm always telling them the same thing I tell my children, which is the people who are closest to you are the ones you have the most conflict with, simply because they're closest to you. Yeah. So if you have a way or a mechanism of figuring out how to conflict resolve, that's what you need almost more than anything else. And in the context of a divorce, having legal counsel that can be there to support you in that, but at the same time, knowing that, sometimes the going gets rough and, everyone's got to go to the mattresses. But even throughout that time, see, to me, from where I'm sitting, you're the strongest family lawyer I've ever met, because it takes incredible strength to seek communication. It takes incredible strength to make yourself vulnerable in that way. Yeah. What are the lessons in vulnerability that you've learned along the way, and the strength of vulnerability that you've learned that you can teach our viewers about?
For the longest time, for many people, it's very risky to be vulnerable. Like when I was working for other law firms or when I was a student, I never showed my vulnerabilities because I was trying to gain approval from somebody higher up, and I felt like it could be used against me. When I created an environment such as having my own firm, being my own boss, and achieving what I needed to achieve, then I didn't need to be worried about being vulnerable. And the first thing that I did when I created enough power so that I didn't have to be dependent on anybody else's approval was to completely reveal myself to everyone, including my clients, to my family, to the internet, through blogging and everything. So I started writing about everything that I suffered from. I suffered from anxiety. I suffered from panic attacks sometimes. I've had depression in the past. Thankfully, I don't have depression right now, but there's no guarantee that I'm not going to have it in the future. And I truly believe that people, for example, who are anxious can be way higher achieving than people who are not. Yeah. There's even actually like a podcast that's being put out, I don't know if you've heard of it or not, by Harvard Business School. It's called The Anxious Achiever. It's all about anxious. I haven't heard about it. It's incredible. I listen to it every day, but it talks about how much anxiety helps you and how it's such an asset as long as you can try to kind of like channel it in a more healthy way instead of letting it drown you, because it has the power of taking you to very, very far places. And it also has the power of taking you into depression and a deep hole. So what I've tried to do is to reveal myself. And as soon as, a word comes out where people think, oh, here's this person who, has been able to get all these things and, seems to have, somewhat of a good or perfect life. I write a blog about how horrible my past has been, what challenges I've had, how much I've suffered in the past, because more and more we as people are actually going towards the direction of respecting honesty and vulnerability. Yes. And we've been kind of grown up and told, especially in the Persian culture in the past, that we need to put out this front, like, for example, yes. Persian women tend to always look good to me. You know, they always have the perfect clothing, the perfect makeup, the perfect hair, the perfect husband, the perfect kids, the perfect education, especially, you know, the ones that you see, you know, in the Western world. That's the culture we come from, that you know, it's kind of a taboo to go out and, you know, tell people what's wrong with you inside. So I'm trying to break away with that and say there is a lot of things wrong with me, just like there's a lot of things wrong with everybody else in the world. Right. And I feel like that's really been a huge weapon to my success, because take it from the blogs that I've written, they get the highest viewership of any other blogs that I write, you know, when I write about myself. And they bring the most business, because I get emails and calls from people who say, you know what, I can relate to what you've gone through. I respect you for saying this. I want to be your client. That's the kind of client I want. People who judge me or they think I'm being crazy by revealing myself, I'm sure there are plenty. And I've heard that, you know, there's been, you know, some people talk about me, but they don't come around me. And that's good enough for me. You know, like I'm doing my thing and I don't care what they do or say. My aim in this world is to be as vulnerable as I can, because that's for me, that's my help and my contribution to other people who don't have the opportunity to be vulnerable yet.
So I want to go back to something you said at the beginning of this vulnerability conversation that I found absolutely mind-blowing. And you said that you found the courage to be vulnerable when you had the confidence to no longer seek other people's approval. Yeah. Normally we think of it the other way around. We think if we're confident and believe in ourselves, then, you know, we don't have these vulnerabilities to share. But you are saying, and I think you're absolutely correct, everyone has these vulnerabilities. Everybody has these flaws and these dark sides. And it takes an incredible strength and self-confidence to put them out there, because you're putting them out there in the context of conquering them, or at a minimum, facing them and being authentic and honest about them. Mm-hmm. How do you find the strength to do that? You know, just as a human, as a woman, but especially as an Iranian woman, as you said, given some of the cultural constraints that we face in terms of the demands of perfection that are placed upon us, although they exist everywhere, but certainly within our community, they're very pervasive. How do you find that strength?
It's really as simple as saying, are these vulnerabilities good things? You just have to shift your mind. Like we've been told that our vulnerabilities are bad and they shouldn't be spoken about, you know, and so what I do is I question that, you know, like the biggest thing is for us to question whether, you know, we were having this conversation, a woman being proud of her sexuality, is that a bad thing or a good thing? Because we've been told it's bad, but it's incredible, you know, or is...
There can be so much power in that. Absolutely.
There's so much energy in that. There's so much release. There's so much power. There's so much love in that. And we've been told that it's ugly and it's a weakness. And if we explore it somehow, you know, we're, you know, like skanks and sluts, which I've been called in the past. I questioned that, you know, like when I came to a certain age, I questioned, should I follow this and keep on hiding my sexuality, or should I actually believe that it's a good thing, you know? And so it's the same thing when it comes to vulnerabilities. You know, if I'm having, you know, problems in my marriage and I'm seeing a therapist, is that a bad thing or a good thing? We've been told it's a bad thing, but it's perhaps the best thing you can do to, you know, if you have issues, you go to a professional and you know, you get help. So when it comes to my business model or who I am, I look at my vulnerabilities as strengths, and therefore I speak about them.
That's amazing. I love that. For those of you that are just joining us now, I'm speaking with Leena Yousefi. She's a multi-award-winning family lawyer and the founder of YLAW, the fastest growing family-led law firm in British Columbia. She is the kind of person who the BBC profiled, not just in an article, but an entire week in her life. Leena, I would love to talk about the photo, the famous photograph that you, and I say famous because, you know, it got millions of followers. Yeah. So when I say famous, I don't mean just between you and me, millions, it earned you millions of followers. Yeah. Tell us about this photograph. It's of you and your daughter. Yeah. Tell us about the context, the setting. When was it taken? What's your daughter's name?
Yes. So That was when she was, I think, about 5 months old, and it was in the winter, and it was dark in the morning. And that night she had woken up maybe 12 times. And
oh boy.
And I had one of the most serious, most high-profile appeal cases, which I had to make submissions on in court that day. I was facing, I think, 6 other lawyers in front of 3 judges, and we had lost at the lower trial level, and we were appealing the loss, at the higher court level to win. And we were dealing with like serious, multi-million-dollar international cases where everybody had a stake. So I had woken up and I was so tired, and I was just questioning, can I pull through this? Like, the stakes are really high. And I was, putting my court attire out and on, and my.
And this is your robes that you wear for court. This is the barrister robes.
Yeah. The robe and the tab and whatever. And I, the one thing I do as a woman is, regardless of how I'm feeling, if I need help, I pick the best pair of shoes I can ever have and I put them on. As soon as I put those shoes on, I feel a lot better. So I did. Right. And my husband was kind of looking at me, and I grabbed the baby to kiss her. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to win this appeal, and I want a memory of it. So can you please take a picture of, me and her as I'm, kind of rolling out my court luggage and leaving. And he said, okay. So he took the picture, and I went and made my submissions, and we won. And, that was one of the proudest moments I had, because I felt like, regardless of, the sleepless nights, and that's what I said in the picture. I said, one day you're going to grow up, and I'm going to tell you about all the sleepless nights. And I'm going to tell you that if I could do it, you could too. And I still believe in that. I put that picture on LinkedIn, and it ended up getting 4 million viewers, and the BBC became interested, and they kind of profiled it, and the rest was history. It was a very sweet moment.
So it's so interesting, because so many of us are told LinkedIn is not a place for personal photographs. LinkedIn is not a place for vulnerability. LinkedIn is the professional networking site. You want to post a picture of your baby, put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
And what you did was actually quite radical, right? And by the way, men can get away with posting things like that much more easily than women can. But what you did is, not only did you post it, but you posted it on LinkedIn, and you posted it without apology, and you linked it to your professional self. Yeah. What made you do that? And did you have any idea the level of attention and accolades that this photograph would bring?
No, I didn't. And, the thing is, I respect LinkedIn, so I won't go around and, post pictures of animals or videos of cute kitties or anything like that. But it's, that you don't do that.
Need more and more videos of cute kitties, by the way. I'm all used up on videos of cute kitties.
I don't think, this division that, you separate your professional life from your personal life, you separate your relationship from your clients, is such an old timer. People, if they come to me, they want to know who I am. They want to connect with me. So the reason I posted that picture is because it was still work related. I was still going to work. I was still wearing my court attire, but I'm also a mother, and I'm also a woman. And before I go to court, I grab my baby and I kiss her, and I kiss my husband, and I leave. So what my motto is to bring my personal life into my professional life, because again, I question, is it right for us to keep on separating ourselves from who we are because of the fear that we may look unprofessional? Yeah. And if we do it with taste, if I don't come out, crying on the camera saying, of course, you don't want to get too personal, but you also want to show all aspects of you, because that's what makes you beautiful as a human being. And if you want people to pay you, connect with you, and have you as their lawyer, they need to get to know you as a person, not just a professional. I don't believe that that you'll be less successful if you show who you are as a person. So even on our Instagram pages and things like that, I do very little actually advertising about our services. I talk more about who are our lawyers, who are these people, what did they do, what did they achieve, how many hours a night did they work to win a case. And I feel like I'm sure that I get a lot of judgment on that, but as far as the business module goes, we're getting a lot more exposure and expansion than other modules that say, keep this professionalism separate than your personal life.
Yeah, you've made several references to some of the negative judgment. The reality is that the negative judgment always comes with success. There's always going to be a group of people who are negatively judging your methods. Yeah. And I really admire the way in which you are able to emotionally just look past that and forge ahead. And you've been really successful in doing that. Would you say that the same advice holds generally for professional women? And what advice do you have just generally, not for necessarily for people just in the law, but generally moving forward, would you have the same advice for all professional women?
It's, I know there's that thing like, don't believe what other people say, or, don't, and I guess I just said that myself, but, for me, it's not that I don't care about what they say. It's not that it doesn't affect me. It affects me. It used to, at least, very, very deeply. But what I do differently is, again, I question. Okay, so they said, for example, at law school, I was called a loose cannon, right? And one of my associates the other day said, that same person who called you a loose cannon was, talking about, how proud she is of you for becoming successful. So, when I see something like that, instead of being like, people think I'm crazy and I should change my behavior, I just question, is what they're saying true? Am I a loose cannon? No, I'm not a loose cannon. Mm-hmm. So that's where I put closure on those thoughts. But it's very difficult for somebody who is trying to get, like a student, for example, who's trying to get to somewhere, or somebody who doesn't have a big track record, not to care about what people say about them. It's just our nature. And I suffered a lot because of that. Nowadays, I don't care as much because my track record speaks for itself. So when somebody says anything, calls me a loose cannon, I just laugh. I don't even question what they say. It's not true anymore. But when I hear things like that, like you're a loose cannon or whatever, I thrive on it because I say, you know what, I'm gonna prove to you that I'm not. Because I know I'm not. So I'm going to do all these things that you've never been able to do. And then I'm going to sit at a table with you and tell you why you think I'm a loose cannon now. So, the older you get, the more experience you get, and the more you create and achieve, the less that these things matter and the less people actually talk. Nowadays, a lot of the people who used to say, used to judge me or laugh at me for whatever I do, they come back and they say, I was wrong in judging you that way and I'm proud of you and things like that, which is hugely gratifying. So amazing. Yeah, a lot of it comes from just getting older and creating and achieving more. Then you just care a lot less.
So one of the things related to this that you write about and that you and I have spoken about in the past and that you speak about as well in other arenas is the responsibility on senior women to forge this path for junior women, because we've already earned that credibility. Can you tell our viewers what your advice is as far as that's concerned? For those of us that who have already achieved some position of power and strength in our professions or in our respective enterprises, what responsibility do we have to the younger people that have yet to do the same?
I think, my responsibility is this, and I'll give you an example. You're gonna run your first marathon and you're not sure if you're gonna make it to the end, and you're vulnerable and you're anxious and you're not sure. That's when you're junior, you're a student and you're trying to, create a career or whatever, and you just don't know if you're gonna get there. Imagine you start running and by the time you make it, they give you a medal. That medal signifies that you did it, you achieved it, you created it. But the journey to get to that medal can be very challenging because there's going to be so much doubt. Now, imagine right when you're at the start line, somebody gives you a medal and says, congratulations, you did it. How much more likely are you to finish that marathon if you already were given the medal? And how much faster would you do it if you already had the medal in your hand rather than when you got it at the end? So the problem, I would have grown a lot faster if I actually believed that I could do it back then. My journey was a lot of questioning and a lot of downtime and a lot of not being sure if I'm going to do it. So what I try to do with junior women is that I sit them down and I say, I'm giving you the medal. You did it already. You just need to get there. It's just a matter of time. So what I try to do is to tell them whatever you're feeling inside, you're going to achieve it. Just tune out the noise because you have the medal. And you need to believe that you already have it. So like when I kind of shift it that way, I feel like that's my contribution, because a lot of my failures and waste of time came from not knowing whether I'm going to get the medal. But I did at the end. And I wish someone at the very beginning told me I was going to get it, because then I would have gotten to where I am a lot faster and with a lot more confidence and positivity.
That's wonderful. I love that. Just this sort of mentoring approach that assumes the individual in front of you is going to succeed, and it helps them have that faith in themselves as they move forward. Do you also feel that it's our responsibility as senior women, and I'll age myself here, I'm in my 40s, as senior women, to also be the ones to take more risks and to show the younger women that risk-taking is allowed, that it can work, but also to normalize it more? Because the more risks I take in terms of work-life integration, wardrobe, or really any aspect of my professional path, the more likely the younger people following me are to take those same risks.
That you couldn't have said it better. I think, one of the things that we owe to younger women, especially in our culture, because, there's a lot of times where women in our culture are not looked at as, as capable enough or equally capable as men, for example. And that, when we have kids, that means we have to choose and we have to compromise and give up, I want to set an example through myself. I want to show through my actions that if I can do it, you can too. So I've kind of stepped away from preaching and telling other people, this is what you need to do to get there. And I've kind of stepped towards what can I do within myself to show through example that I can. And what that's done is it's created, I think, thousands by now of women who have reached out to me through different, all sorts of modes, social media, email, phone, community, asking if I can help and mentor them. And I have never said no. I will give up my sleep to make sure that I can talk to them and tell them what I did. I think as Persian women, such as myself and you, perhaps the most important thing that we can do for the younger generation is to speak to them and show through our actions that, again, if we can do it, you can too. And I think, the Persian women are some of the most intelligent and capable women I know. I just really encourage them to question the stigmas and what they've been told, sometimes in our culture, and try to prove them wrong.
That's wonderful. For those of you just tuning in now, I'm speaking with Leena Yousefi, an incredible award-winning family lawyer and winner of a variety of national and international accolades, who was profiled by the BBC for a week in her life. And we're talking about the distinction between work-life balance versus work-life integration, which is really something that Leena's been able to accomplish in her arena in a manner that has advanced her professional path. Leena, one of the things we've discussed during our conversation so far is your background and experience with failure and pain, both in terms of your profession, but also in terms of, emotional and spiritual states.
Yes.
Our professional paths are not linear. And so I assume going forward, you expect to have setbacks. What's your approach to that? How do you anticipate that? And how do you prepare for future failures, which are sure to come your way just as they come to everyone else as well?
I told you before, I wake up every day feeling that I'm going to fail at something in the morning and being scared. And then by noon, I kind of analyze it and I imagine the worst case scenario. And by the evening, I'm ready to take the risk. So, at every stage of life, at least for me, I'm not done. I'm always thinking what I can do next. But what I've learned through my experience is that failure is the biggest gift that I've been ever given in life, because it has empowered me, it has taught me, it has humbled me, it has kept my ego in check. And so I look at failure as one of the biggest gifts that I could be given. So when I take on a project, I take it on completely embracing the failure that may or may not happen. And when it does happen, I'm not gonna lie, like I'm pretty much like A-type personality. I go down in the dumps. I cry. I question myself. I don't know if I listened to your TED talk. When you lose a case. Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it shakes you to your core, and you go into this like deep dark space where you just don't want to have this career, and you question every single decision you've made. But I get up, I get up and I keep on fighting. It's the same thing with these awards. They happened after a few times of trying and being rejected and questioning, God, what else do I need to do to prove to you that I'm worthy of this award? So, I love and praise failure. It's a part of me, and I'm not afraid of it. Well, I am, but I kind of I work on myself, and I live up the courage to not be afraid of it and face it. So I think that's really important, because especially as lawyers, lawyers actually tend to like to avoid risk, and most of them like to be in their comfort zones, and that can create a lot of like unhealthy environments and lifestyles. So I try to keep on reminding myself that a part of my growth is failing and getting out of my comfort zone. And that's been really helping on a daily basis when I just kind of sit with that feeling and accept it.
So I think it's a good time to remind our audience and our viewers, or maybe those that didn't tune in right at the beginning, that Leena Yousefi has a track record of winning 90% of her cases from 2013 to the present. We're having a conversation about failure and the nonlinear path to success with one of the most successful lawyers in Canada, not just female lawyers and not just lawyers in the family law arena, but one of the most successful lawyers in Canada. Leena is in fact the only lawyer in the history of Canada to have her law firm ranked in the same year as one of the top 400 fastest growing companies in Canada by the Globe and Mail, and be featured in the same year as one of the top 500 companies by Canadian Business. And yet we're having this really important conversation about failure and how to approach it. So the next question I want to ask you, Leena, is how do you take care of yourself? What do you do for your health? What do you do for your body? What do you do for your mind? And what advice do you have for our viewers on how to stay physically and mentally strong, particularly now in these challenging times of COVID and quarantines and social isolation? What advice do you have for our viewers in that respect? I
was listening to that Harvard Business Review podcast, and the previous chief operations officer of Facebook said something that I'm implementing every day in my life, and it's working. She said on Mondays, she writes down 3 things that she wants to achieve that week. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be work related. For example, I want to spend the 15 hours with my daughter, or whatever it is. And so what I do is on Mondays, I say, I want to do 3 hours of exercising this week. So I set the intention, and then it's up to me how I want to spend that time exercising. So for example, during COVID, I can't go to yoga, or I can't do a lot of activities. So every morning I've told my husband I need 20 minutes with YouTube, and I'm just going to do some exercising. And, I have that budget of 3 hours. And because I've put it in my head, I want to meet it, because I want to say by Friday of that week, I met that target. So for me, it's a lot about, taking the thoughts out of your head and kind of like talking about I should do something, to writing them down and saying I will do it. It takes effort. It takes consistency, especially during COVID. It's very, very difficult to do a lot of things that we used to do. So for me, one of the most important things, for my mental health is to exercise. So I just budget 3 hours a week for exercising. It's not much if you think about it. It's, it can be 20, 25 minutes of even stretching or doing some workouts. Mentally, I see a therapist every month, regardless of whether or not I'm having problems. So it's kind of like a mental check-in.
Yeah.
The same way as, like we go to the doctor and we get tests and we want to make sure that physically we're okay. I just want to make sure that mentally I'm okay. Even if I feel like I'm okay, I may not be. So those things I kind of follow religiously. And I feel like I've really grown and become healthier because of continuing to commit to seeing a therapist once a month and exercising 3 hours a week. And I don't try to, have unrealistic expectations. Like, I'm going to work out twice a day and I'm going to do it every day and I'm going to go on a cleanse and not drink for 2 months. Not going to happen in my case. I'm a bit more prone to temptations than the next person. But if you ask me, the biggest secret to my mental health is having a glass of wine here and there. There's nothing like wine.
I love that. I love the honesty. And thank you for that great advice of sort of taking what our intentions are and setting them and putting them down on paper and committing ourselves to them and setting that expectation. But it's a realistic one. It's not an unrealistic expectation.
Yes.
That's wonderful. So we don't have a lot more time here. And I wanted to do two things before we finished. First, I just wanted myself and our viewers to get to know you more, as if we just met at a party or at a social function. What shows do you watch on Netflix? What books do you read? I want to know how you waste your time. In other words, you're this incredibly accomplished woman. I'm sure that you waste almost none of it. But when you're sitting in front of the TV, and just watching something, what do you watch? And then I also would love to know what books you're reading right now.
Okay, so I never watched TV until I had a child because, at 8 or 9 p.m. after I finished the day and cooked and eaten, there's nothing I can do. I can just literally lay on the couch for half an hour and just watch the screen. And on Netflix, the latest show that I've been watching is called The Wild Wild West. It's about a sex cult back in the 80s. I don't know if you've watched it or not.
But I will now.
Fascinating. It's just the psychology behind cults and the cult leaders and the conflict between the normal society, the outside society, and the life of a cult and how much they fight to keep it alive. I found that fascinating. And before that, I watched what was that Netflix show? It's pretty good. The Queen's Gambit. The chess
Gambit. Yes, the chess show.
Really, really awesome. I love that. I love just the setting and things like that. It's just kind of random. I'm more into documentaries because I like to get to know the real people and what's happening in real lives. As far as reading, I think, Shermin, after having 4 kids, nowadays there is no reading. I see all
Good Night Moon.
Yeah,
it's Llama, Red Pajama.
I read at work when I have to read my client files, but the only time nowadays when I read at home it's called The Baby Book by Dr. Sears. When she's not sleeping, I just go and read that. What should I do? She won't go to sleep. That's as far as much reading as I get nowadays.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I love your authenticity with respect to that. So, okay, last question, and this one is going to be, really serious, a sort of a bigger philosophical question. And I ask this of a lot of successful people. I have the opportunity to interview people. Nobody as remarkable as yourself, but I have the opportunity to interview a wide variety of people who have achieved success in different fields. When will it ever be enough? I mean, how much success is enough success? At what point are you going to say, I'm done. I'm just going to go lay on a beach somewhere and have somebody hand me umbrella drinks, not for a week, but, for the rest of my life, and just coast and relax. Will there ever be a time when it'll be enough?
Such a great question. And I've struggled with that all my life. The first time I went, when I had my very severe depression and anxiety, when I went to my psychologist, I just kept on telling him, I keep on running and running and running. And it's like the target just keeps on going further and further and further. Yeah. And at the same time, I feel like once I verbalized it, it just it became so crazy. I actually went as far as telling him, I feel like I'm a failure because no matter how much I achieve, it's not enough. The target keeps on shifting. And he spent I think a couple years trying to make me understand that it's okay to rest and be average and be normal and not think that you're superwoman. And I was able to achieve that mindset, nowadays, right now, I was actually speaking about this with my husband. I said, I've done what I needed to do. I've gotten to where I want to get, and I don't actually know where I want to go from here. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that came to me after really, really questioning this question on a daily basis, why am I running? two things came to my mind. We're either running because we have low self-esteem and we keep on thinking that we're failures, and no matter how much we achieve, we need to do more to validate ourselves through external approval. Like I want external people to approve of me because inside I don't have that self-confidence.
Yeah.
So there's that type of people. And then there's the other types of people who say, I want to run and achieve because I can, because it's my purpose.
Because they still have legs and they still move.
Yeah, because I can do something that a lot of other people can't do, because I can make this world better, because I can teach people how to be better. And so previously I was running because I had no self-esteem and I needed other people to validate me. And with that came so much suffering and victimizing myself and blaming people for the way I felt. Once I overcame that and realized, okay, why am I still running? I realized that I'm running because I feel like I have the potential and the power to run. So again, I questioned, is that a bad thing if I want to keep on running? Is that something that's giving me life and energy and purpose? And if it is, if it's positive, then I'm going to keep on running. And right now I feel like I'm going to continue running, but in a positive way, because internally I feel like I can, and I can be better, and I can create a better person out of myself, and I can help my society. And for that reason, I'm still thinking about what the next project is, but I know I'm going to do more. I'm not done yet.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute privilege getting to know you and hearing what you have to say and learning from you. Thank you also to all of our viewers for tuning in today with this incredible opportunity to get a chance to speak with Leena Yousefi, who is a multi-award-winning family lawyer, founder of YLAW, one of the fastest growing female-led law firms in British Columbia. But even grander than that, her law firm is actually one of the fastest growing businesses in all of Canada. It's a privilege to have you here. I feel as though we're even luckier than the BBC. The BBC profiled you for a week, and we got to have an intimate conversation and get real feedback from you on how to improve ourselves, our lives, and our professional lives in particular. I want to encourage all of our viewers to subscribe to the Yara Leadership Dialogues series, which you can do right now. Please give us a thumbs up on YouTube, and we look forward to seeing you in future episodes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Leena.
Thank you so much, Shermin, for an amazing interview. I appreciate that. And thank you, Yara. Yes, everybody, please subscribe and do the thumbs up. Thanks.